All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the Tennessee Titans in today's video. To me, the game plan here is very simple. You got to go out there and you got to get your quarterback number one with the number one overall draft pick. That guy to me is Shedeur Sanders, but that guy to you might be Cam Ward. But here's the thing. There's a lot of different avenues this team could take. And last year, they kind of went balls to the wall as far as they went for Calvin Ridley, and they got Calvin Ridley. But unfortunately, whether it was Will Levis, whether it was Mason Rudolph, there was never any continuity. There was never any explosiveness. The Titans offense last year just wasn't getting it done. And so they bring in, after a 3-14 season, a brand new GM in Mike Borgonzi. And I get having the number one overall pick is a really good spot to be in. And I personally, I'm a Packers fan, all right? I haven't made a Titans video in so long. Unfortunately for me, I was a huge Will Levis believer. There are numerous options that Tennessee can employ here. They can take a QB with pick number one. I've seen a lot of mock drafts where they take a guy like Travis Hunter. They take Abdul Carter. You don't even need to take a quarterback with the number one overall draft pick in theory. You could also trade away that draft pick, which we'll talk about in just 1 second. But to me, fortune favors the bold. I would go out there and I would get my guy, because you could pull a Chicago Bears where you give another season to Will Levis or a veteran. You go out there and get a veteran for a 1-year contract, just like the Chicago Bears kept Justin Fields for a 3rd season. And you trade away your number one draft pick and you have a haul. Like Carolina traded for the number one pick, right? They got Mr. Bryce Young and they gave the Chicago Bears a haul. And that's turned into guys like Rome Odunze. That's turned into a bunch of Caleb Williams. That's turned into a bunch of different studs. But at the same time, if you do trade away that number one pick, you might not get the number one pick next year. And next year might have the best quarterback we've ever seen in our generation, or you might have a franchise caliber QB. And speaking of franchise caliber QBs, I was just reading an article on The Athletic, and sorry guys, I'm a little bit sick. I can hear myself right now. But I think it was Diana Rossini, and this is the headliner. NFL insiders skeptical there's a franchise caliber QB available in draft. And here's what they had to say. Over the past month, numerous front office sources echoed a common refrain to The Athletic. They would not rank any of the draft prospects ahead of the 6 quarterbacks who were selected in the first round last year. One executive told them, I would guess 90% of the people here at the Senior Bowl would feel that way. And here's where I get annoyed and pissed off, and this happens every year in the quarterback cycle, and people forget about this every year in the quarterback cycle. Last year at this time, if you're not drafting Caleb Williams, everybody else was a shot in the dark, right? This time last year, February 14th, happy Valentine's Day to everybody watching. Nobody knew what anybody was going to be. Some people thought J.J. McCarthy was going to be good. Some people thought Jaden Daniels was going to be a bona fide bust. Some people thought Bo Nix was going to be a bust. J.J. McCarthy got ridiculed for being selected number 10 overall. Bo Nix got ridiculed. The Broncos got absolutely ridiculed selecting Bo Nix. Like, just absolutely ridiculed. And what did they do? They went 10-7 and made the playoffs. So that's kind of my whole ethos here is, your GM said he's not going to pass on generational talent and that they're aiming to build through the draft. So you don't have to take Cam Ward at 1. You don't have to take Shedeur Sanders at pick number 1. You could trade back, pick number 7, take somebody else, draft a QB next year. Maybe Cam Ward slides to pick number 6. I don't really know. I'm not a GM. I'm not a scout. But my point just is, I always urge rebuilding teams in states like this where you have a creme de la creme draft pick, aka number 1 overall, and you can go out there and change the whole course of your franchise just simply by drafting Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I know Abdul is really good. I know Travis Hunter is really good, but you're not going to win in the National Football League without a QB. And with today's era, Callahan could not be here next year. He's probably on the hot seat already just because they went 3-14. Your GM could get fired in 1 year. So many things can happen in the course of an NFL season, offseason, a 12-month period. So much can change that I just always think it's in a team's best interest if you've got one of these high draft picks and there's a high projected quarterback that you take one of them. My point just is this happens all the time. I guarantee you by the time draft day comes around in a couple of months from now, I guarantee you the top 2 draft picks will be quarterbacks in every single mock you ever read. But just to give you a little bit of options. Here's what an NFL scout predicted that the Titans trade return would be if they move on from the number 1 overall pick. And he told this is an AFC scout, and he told this to Teron Davenport with ESPN. They want more picks, so I think they'd come off that first pick. But it takes two to tango. Someone has to fall in love with one of these quarterbacks enough to give up a ransom to get into the top. I'd say it would take a pick swap no later than number 7 and a second rounder for this year, going along with a first round pick and at least a second round pick in next year. So it's kind of similar to the Chicago Bears trade, but just basing it off that Bears Panthers trade, I would ask for a guy of DJ Moore's caliber in addition to that ransom for the number 1 overall draft pick. And just to go off feeding off of that, what was that quote? It takes two to tango. Someone has to fall in love with one of these quarterbacks enough to give up a ransom. That's 100% guarantee. And unfortunately, the reason we're talking about all this is because Will Levis did not have a good year. Routinely turned the ball over, whether it was 12 interceptions, whether it was losing 6 fumbles. They went out there, they got Calvin Ridley, they got Tony Pollard, they spent a bunch of money, and it just didn't translate. The defense actually did pretty decent. They gave up just the second fewest yards per game, but they also gave up the second most points per game. Turnover prone. They were 27th in the league in takeaways. The offense was 27th in the league. They also only had 32 sacks, which was 29th in the NFL. They did technically cause over 1 takeaway per game, which was 16th in the league. My concerns don't necessarily come on defense. I get it that it's going to be a couple of moving parts. I totally understand that, but they have $50.3 million in cap space, and for the most part, their positional needs are going to be guys like the quarterback, most importantly, maybe or probably definitely a right tackle, just some more offensive line talent, not only depth on the right side of the ball. They also are probably going to target an edge rusher at some point in, I would guess, free agency. Malcolm Kuntz I've seen floated out there, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick. I do see Tennessee making a move like that. But for me, man, all it comes down to is just getting that number 1 draft pick overall. You got to get that pick correctly, whether you're trading down to pick number 7, whether you're trading down to pick number 4, or you're selecting a quarterback, or you're selecting an edge rusher. It doesn't matter. The first and most important thing that will set this franchise on track will be the proper quarterback. And so, in my ideal world, the Tennessee Titans select Shedeur Sanders at pick number 1, and then they also go for T. Higgins in free agency. He's a Tennessee native. I absolutely love Nashville. It always kind of baffles me that Nashville is not, especially with the income tax. That's an amazing city. It's in a great location. I'm a big golfer. There's a lot of great golf courses out there. But it always kind of baffles me that players aren't itching to get to Tennessee. I don't really get it. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button. We'll do more in-depth Titans content as the offseason progresses. But thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you haven't already. And let me know down below what you are doing with the number 1 pick if you were the Tennessee Titans GM. Peace.